Hell hath no fury like the scorn of a woman. No, I'm kidding. Where were we?
7 judges, corruption
7 judges.
inside of our borders.
Whatever.
outside
I'm
of the
already
borders.
bored. Look, you got the President of the United States.
Let's talk about it.
45th and 47th President of the United States. He's on national television. I walk in the bedroom. I see him. My wife has the default channel for Samsung, which goes to Fox News.
Okay.
Okay. And like, it's sad that I have to preface the fact that my wife doesn't watch Fox News, but we live in the type of world like, I think in White Lotus they show that
Yes.
a female is not allowed to have a Republican perspective
Correct.
in public. In
Correct.
private they're allowed, in public they're not. If that's not a double standard, I don't know what is. But I see this going on over here on the television set over here, and I stop and I listen, and lo and behold, what he's talking about? Corrupt judges. Corrupt judges that are former attorneys, as well as attorneys that are former judges, and human beings that are able to manipulate the system, are really at the core of the issue that threatens the majority of our liberties, because it is those judges that make decisions on which side of the law the chips will fall. So for example, in my case, there has been no greater person that has suffered damage during the Biden administration than Daniel Reese's, for the systemic reasons that I've outlined in my many, many briefs. But one of the things that I haven't really touched upon is that without Hollywood and movies, someone like myself would not even be able to communicate. And the reason why I say this is because many people who dismiss what I have to say are able to do so because they've been ignorant of some of the greatest cinematic stories that have ever been told, so they have never learned the lessons that I am teaching them right here. So it is imperative that you understand that without being able to reference movies, my ability to orate and my ability to really communicate with the outside world is extremely limited. So the reason why I'm saying this is, to me, these things that I talk about are not just movie references. They are cutaways, like in Family Guy, where a human being needs to go very quickly in their brain to the reference that I'm making and then come back to me. And that back and forth process creates systemic hypnosis in the majority of human beings who have any sentimental or emotional attachment to their set thereof content. So, you like 80s movies?
I do.
So do I.
They're the
And you ever see the movie Made? He goes, don't hit me with your whip. See?
It's
Like,
one of the best scenes I've ever seen in any movie.
now, that movie features an actor by the name of Bud Cort, who is featured in Harold and Maude, which really is the Easter egg amongst Easter eggs in this whole thing. And the reality is that Bud Cort is a phenomenal actor, but because of his typecast as a character where the subject matter is no longer palatable for modern audiences on YouTube, so you'd have to look at the content of Harold and Maude, it really goes to show the difference between a digital world and an analog world, where in an analog world, human beings who were exposed to a certain memory could not undo that memory. But in a digital world that transitioned from an analog world, things that are in the past simply are in the past. And the magnitude of the digital content is amplified since our history is only recorded publicly for the last 25 years. The internet, pictures, digital things like that. Before it was pretty...
I'm like trying to do the math.
Yeah, you'd have to go to like a library, Encyclopedia Britannica, things that are owned by other people. But now we live in a digital world. And a great example of that is the Bud Cort reference versus Buck and Chuck. And Buck and Chuck was made by a director named Mike White. Now, the reason why most people don't really know Mike White, he made something called...
Beavis and Butthead?
No, that's Mike Judge.
Oh.
And that's a great reference because I was saving all the Mike Judge references for the videos regarding the 7 judges. There was like Judge Reinhold, Mike Judge.
Judge Reinhold's great.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Beverly Hills Cop he makes.
there's a lot of Judge references, but
Bud, I'm sorry, you were talking about, Mike White. Who's Mike White?
Mike White made a show called White Lotus. He's
Oh,
a writer,
oh.
director, and he's done a lot of other things in between. He's did a lot of cartoons. He's a very prolific Hollywood writer and an amazing narrator.
Okay.
He really is a narrator. He tells really good stories. That's what, and they're ASMR and all of the imagery and then like reverse lighting and things like that. Check out a book called Save the Cat if you want to learn about movies. But if you want to learn about, what is it? This right here, Applied Mathematics, watch this channel. That's what this channel is about. This channel is about Applied Mathematics, Code and Honor, and right here, the law, right here. So the reason why we have to film today is because I really want to reiterate to everyone the magnitude of the ruling that you're about to see played out live. And that's where the fourth wall comes crashing down.
Okay.
Because in this channel, you will see whether or not I win, which is option 1, or option 2, I become the first person in US history to be legally liable for something that they are the victim of. I don't mean human beings that are victims and then law enforcement uses their powers against those people. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a guy going to jail for a crime he didn't commit. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about for a guy going to jail for being a victim of a crime on the record. So for example, if you were comparing my civil matters to criminal matters, this would be the first time a human being is incarcerated for being raped or getting the shit kicked out of him. So
Right.
like he's in jail for 3 years, what's the charge? He got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
Okay? It's never happened before.
Right.
So I would be
Right.
the first person in US history, which obviously I will take immediately to the Supreme Court, and that's how you get a one-way ticket to the Supreme Court. What are you reading there?
Yeah.
Part 2. Part 2. It switched over. Okay.
I still have to do my job. It was bothering me.
You have an interesting job, you know.
I do.
If your kids ever have career day, how would career day go? If you ever,
How would career
Speaking
do?
of career day, you should check out this movie called The Dry and The Dry 2.
I will.
And you will never believe what do you think the name of the two primary suspects in the first The Dry is?
Jamie and Dan.
No, Jamie and Mal.
Nah.
Yeah, but it's not weird or anything like that. You
That's
know who the
funny.
main suspect is in the second one? What his name is?
No. Dan.
Daniel. You were close. So these
went
are,
out on a
just, these are just coincidences. And Eric Banya, who's amazing
He
as
is.
Hector, and you know what his job is?
He's a federal agent.
He's a federal agent in law enforcement. That is not what I do. You know what his specialty is? White collar crimes and financial crimes. Yeah, it's just a weird set of coincidences. Yeah. But it's a little couple of factors that are hard to believe, like Eric Banya graduating high school 20 years ago, when like in the movie he looks like he's like in his early 50s.
It's
and
true.
so it's a little, but like the Australian accent, and it's in the outback. The whole thing takes place in Australia.
I did
And the
notice that.
weirdest, and I want to tell you.
I did watch the previews.
And the second, you want to know what the weirdest part of the second part is?
I mean, I do. Yeah.
So one of the bad guys is played by Deborah Lee Ferrachis, or I don't even know how to say her last name. And you know what she's famous for?
Mm-mm.
Being Hugh Jackman's beard. And Hugh Jackman was married to this
Oh,
woman.
I know. Yeah,
for,
I know
like,
who you're
30
talking
years,
about.
and,
Yeah.
like, her whole thing was like,
Yes.
I'm a human being. Because like people would be like, oh my god, Hugh Jackman's married to you?
She's in the second one?
She's in the second one,
Oh.
but she has so much plastic surgery because I think that like once her and Hugh Jackman broke up, she like realized that she's like a 70-year-old white woman that is not like really compatible with someone that looks like Hugh Jackman. So she like went for the whole like reconstructive.
yeah.
There's like a lot of like lips and
Mhm.
like she like fixes her like.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's sad because it looks like she's a really good actress. It looks like she's a really good actress, and I think that she was known to be a famous Australian actress.
I think so too.
But it's really one of those things where I believe that women age beautifully naturally or are just ugly. And like, as you know, like,
Yeah.
men are ugly also. I find myself to be in a state where I currently feel very fat and ugly, and I'm sure that that'll change in time because,
I think men get better looking with age.
you know, I actually never understood.
And I don't
Why?
think women do.
I never understood why all these guys that are in Hollywood have such good bodies. Even like fat guys like Jonah Hill end up having like good bodies. And you know what I figured out?
What's that?
Because once you see yourself on screen as fat, it really is like a great motivator. Like, I gotta be honest with you. There's like a ton of really good stuff that has blossomed due to this content. One of the things is, looks like the misunderstanding with my kid has been corrected, so that's a really
Which is
positive
fantastic.
thing.
I know.
And I hope that it continues because there's still a couple of matters that I'm not crazy about. But the point is that this channel and this content is really
One
about
day at a
this guy
time.
right over here, and not my boys, not my wife, none of that stuff. So as you can see here, 7. Here's your applied mathematics number for the day.
Yeah.
7 judges.
That whip
And the
out on
pre-motion judgment, the pre-motion evidence is really about me discussing things like, okay, first and foremost, we live in the United States of America, not Kyrgyzstan, where, what's his name, Aladdin the dictator. It's one of my favorite movies. Have you ever seen it? I'm sorry, I'm a big Ali G fan and Sacha Baron Cohen, and I love Borat, and I really love Aladdin, and it's a sleeper, and I say that because it's so good that I think
it's one of those movies I would have to watch with someone. I wouldn't want to watch by myself.
I think that
The humor would be lost.
I think that my son was saying that Elon Musk is a big fan of the movie, that he changed his rocket to look more like the giant dildo that they referenced in
I don't know. I haven't
The
seen it.
Dictator. And I say this with all humor because when you talk about movies, you're able to discuss subjects such as permanent memories, lasting. So when you look at a movie like Harold and Maude, the generation that grew up with that movie simply couldn't digest seeing Bud Cort in anything else except that role. So it wasn't believable that he was doing anything else because it was so lasting. Such as the gentleman that plays Fredo. He played in Dog Days Afternoon, he played in The Godfather, he won a couple of Oscars and he died. He never did anything else.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's one of the most fascinating stories of an arc in Hollywood. And it all comes back to the stuntman. But before it does that, I want to remind everyone that the movie made significance really stems from passing the baton of Doug Liman and that school of directors to Jon Favreau. Because Swingers and Maid essentially can be looked at as the same movie, but it's very different. Because one is an arc and the other one is a circle. And in order to understand that, one must understand that all movies are basically categorized into seven types of archetype films.
Okay.
And this is made as a love story. Even though it's two
You said
heterosexual
that,
men,
yeah?
it is a love story. And if you want to learn about movies, go to a film class, watch a different YouTube channel, and buy a book called Save the Cat. You might have to read it. I recommend you reading it and not doing book on tape. Now the fourth wall is the reason why this channel is unwatchable and why you have to listen carefully so you don't miss it. And when you talk about the fourth wall, you have to really define what the fourth wall is. So before we jump into that, we got to take a little bit of a break.
Okay.
And this content is extremely important because remember, I am a human being that is subject to the same laws and rules as anyone else. If the content, what I was saying, was not true, a gag order would have immediately been issued, which I would have to respond to with evidence that I have that allows me to say the things that I say.
It's true.
None of that has been produced. Obviously, what I'm saying is true. The people that are going against me figured out that all I want is someone to file an attempt at a gag order,
You have
at which
been.
point I immediately get to release. I do not pass go, I do not, I pass go
You
infinite amount of
really.
times. But yeah, I would like someone to give me a gag order because I accuse some very powerful judges and some really powerful things.
Yeah.
I mean, really salacious
Yeah.
and evil things. Now, that is why this channel is so important, because I cannot file any more paperwork that gets systemically ignored. So now I need to make sure. All right? There you go, there's your ASMR. Now, in order to enjoy this channel, you must understand that this is the first time in human history even though you watch a lot of reality television, that the audience is actually able to come on stage and be a part of the performance.
Okay.
Because it is not a performance, it is real life. So I'm able to break the fifth wall, which needs to be defined in a later video because I need to do a little bit of research. But for anyone that doesn't understand, this is the first channel where the content and the things going on are really sensational, definitely worthy of a movie,
Yeah.
but I filmed them in real life as they happen to bring the audience in. It is very advanced, it is very confusing, and it is extremely rewarding if you understand what you're watching and you have the patience to give your time, which is the only way to pay me. That and cash, but
Cash money.
yeah, I just need to get it, and that's why I'm here, and that's why it's so interesting, because in the real world, it is not safe or responsible to film any content that promotes violence. The whole point of this is I'm as intense as a non-violent human being can be.
I agree with that.
You
statement.
understand?
That is
I'm not
very true
gonna hurt
statement.
anyone, nor do I have any interest. But we live in a really fucked up world where people have to allude and make references to these horrible things and to hurt people to get any attention. This is the most a human being can possibly do. I stole Donald Trump's golf clubs. I saved the country 17 or 18 times. I made sure that the biggest fucking crook that's in Washington is thrown into prison. I don't know what more you guys want from me. I really don't. I really don't. I have a bunch of inventions. I'm going to talk about that in the next video. But in general, give me a fucking break. I'll wrap it up. Why don't you press the button?
All right.
Yeah.